Hi people, I'm Annelia. Welcome back to my channel, and today I am going to be refilming a video. I already did a video about this topic on my channel. I don't know, I just didn't like my energy in that video. I didn't like my energy. So I decided I wanted to refilm it. If I don't have it in the title, then let me tell you what this video is about. This is going to be my diagnosis story. So the time that I was diagnosed, or how I was diagnosed when I was diagnosed with PCOS, and basically my story of developing PCOS and its symptoms. So I want to go all the way back to when I got my very first period. When I got my very first period, I was in the I lied, I was in the 5th grade. And then my second period came and I wasn't so excited because that was the first time I experienced cramps. Yeah, no, it was not cute. And then the third period came around, and this time it was not even on time. This third period came with this, it was terrible. My period was so bad and it hurt so bad, and the bleeding was very heavy, very messy, and it wasn't like my first 2 periods at all. And like I said, it did not come on time. My period was super late, but because I was so young, that was probably the only time that I actually for sure was tracking my period, because my mom at that point had explained to me, this is when you're supposed to see a period, this, that, and the next. So I noticed that it was very late that third time, and I was telling both my mom and my aunt, because my aunt was at our house at that time. I just mentioned it. I was like, my period came super late. I had no shame talking about my period back then. So I was like out loud and proud, except for my daddy. I didn't want males to know. But other females, I said it loud and proud. I'm like, my period's late, and I kind of thought it was a cool thing. I know I'd heard people say it on TV before, if only I knew that it meant pregnancy. For the most part, most times it's pregnancy. But I heard people say it on the TV a lot, so I felt cool saying it. I'm like, my period's late. And then my aunt was like, what? And I basically told her, well, it's supposed to come this date because the last one was this date and da-da-da-da-da. And then she was like, that's not normal. After she said that's not normal, she was like, but anyway, you just got your period. This is what, only the 3rd time? Your body's probably just needs time to adjust. Hormones are probably all over the place. At this point, I'm just not keeping track. But there were times when I did notice, like, hey, my period's late. But I always remembered what my aunt said about, you know, just give it some time, you'll become regular later on. Up to high school, I was still thinking, I'm gonna become regular later on. I don't know what was going through my mind to make me think that. At this point, if your periods are still late every month, come on now, sister. But for some reason, I thought, oh, I'll become regular later on. And that didn't happen. It didn't. So I remember starting college. I came to America for college, and my period was, my period was just terrible at that point, because it went from just being late to skipping months. So when I say skipping months, I mean like it'll come for 2-3 months. It'll of course be late, like come days to weeks late, but it'll be there. It'll come for 3 months, and then it'll skip a month, and then come for another 3-4 months, skip a month. Like that's how it ended up happening. And I was like, okay, yeah, something isn't right, but I still didn't take it super seriously. I still let it go on as it was. And then when I switched schools, I finally decided to do something about it. I had a health center on campus, and I was like, let me go to the health center, see what's going on. And they, of course, what every doctor likes to do, they said, we're gonna put you on birth control pills. So that's what happened. I went on birth control pills. I went on birth control pills, and I went on Sprintec. Sprintec didn't give me any bad side effects. While I was taking Sprintec, my period would come, and it would come on time. And I'm not talking about the same time it's supposed to come every month. I'm talking about it was still like a few days late, but at least it wasn't a few weeks late. So I was satisfied with that. The thing is, though, I hate taking pills. I wasn't consistent. So after like 5-6 months, I stopped. And my periods went haywire again, probably even worse than they were before, and I was starting to get a little more concerned. But still, I was like, I guess I'll just have to go back on the birth control pills. I didn't think too deep into it, and I didn't for a while. Then I remember I went to the health center on campus to get a woman's exam, and I went back like 2-3 times for this woman exams, and it hurt. I'm sorry, but women's exams hurt, okay? They do. I still get it because you have to make sure you're healthy. So I went and I got it, and I had to go like 2-3 times back to back because they were like, oh, we're scraping the walls of your whatever, but it's like we're not collecting any cells. They're not collecting enough cells. I can't remember what the excuse was, but eventually the nurse practitioner at the health center was like, okay, I'm just gonna refer you to an OBGYN at the hospital so they can go and do the test for you and we can get those results. So I went into this hospital and I was so upset because I was like, I gotta do this again. I did this like 3 times with the nurse practitioner at school. I gotta do it again. So I went in there with a sour attitude. And then I went in, I saw the doctor. She was a woman of color, which I really appreciated. Actually, I'm skipping way ahead. I'm sorry. Let me go back. So going back to when I first started taking the birth control pills, I was consistent for a few months, stopped. Then
in 2021, I experienced 2 periods within 7 days of each other. And then I also experienced light bleeding / spotting at the end of that same month. I went to a walk-in clinic because I really didn't want to go anywhere where I had to wait forever for an appointment. And basically, I dealt with this doctor who gave me super racist vibes. If I say I feel like something was race-based, believe me, I really felt that way. I felt so uncomfortable with this doctor. He was a male. He was so nice and welcoming and warm to everybody else in that building who was not of color. And then the minute he saw me, his whole demeanor changed, his whole attitude changed, the whole atmosphere changed. He just seemed so disinterested in helping me. And I was very nice to him still. And I explained my situation and he gave me a don't care attitude. And I explained to him, I'm like, I'm seeing more than 1 period within the month and I'm really scared. I'm losing a lot of blood. I feel super weak. And he just was like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, those were his exact words. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. And then he was like, you could go out front and pay the bill. And I was like, what do you mean? And it kind of took me having to pick his mouth. And then finally he was like, I'm going to write a prescription. And the prescription he wrote was, it was a medication that was supposed to make me stop bleeding if I was to continue, which I did. And I did buy the prescription. I took it. I don't think it worked because I still went on to spot at the end of the month, like I said. But I definitely was not going back to this man. I was not. I felt so uncomfortable. His heart wasn't in it. So that was the end of that.
in 2021, I had to go home because I'm from the Bahamas, so I had to go home because COVID was a thing and we thought we were going to be able to handle tuition and we couldn't. And so they were like, you got to get up on out of here, baby girl, go back to your country. So I did. For a whole year, I went home. I spent that year home in the Bahamas. During this time that I was in the Bahamas, my periods were still acting up. And I went to my family doctor, who I love. She is amazing. When I tell you, this woman explains everything in detail so that you don't leave her office still having questions. If she has to be late with her next appointment to make sure you got everything you need to know, listen, I love her. Me personally, I have not found a doctor who has taken the time to go in depth and explain things the way she explains things. So I was so happy to be home and be able to see my family doctor. She's a general practitioner, so she's not an OBGYN. She doesn't specialize in the area of PCOS, uterus, ovaries, these things. She does not specialize in any of those things, but she is still very knowledgeable in those areas. So she at first thought I had fibroids. She told me to lay down. She started feeling on my tummy. She asked me if I felt any pain. When I said no, she was like, okay, so it might not be fibroids, but I still want to make sure that it's not. So I'm going to order an ultrasound or a scan for you. And basically, a scan is supposed to, be able to show you the insides. And she wrote down this on this paper. She wrote down a list of things she thought it might have been that was causing me to have these weird periods. First on the list, she had fibroids. Under that she had PCOS with a question mark, and then below that she had a few other things. I don't even remember what those other things were. She was mainly focused on fibroids. She didn't even actually say the words PCOS to me, so I didn't even think PCOS. I just focused on fibroids and I thought I had fibroids. I did not take the scan because it was expensive. It was very expensive, you know, and we have free healthcare in the Bahamas. She wasn't free because she's a private doctor, but we have free healthcare in the Bahamas. I could have gone, I think, elsewhere. I lied. Maybe I can't go elsewhere for the scan. I don't know. I don't know if I could have gone someplace for free to get the scan done, but the place where she ordered the scan, you had to pay, and I just didn't have the money. So I didn't get the scan. And she also put me on birth control pills. So she put me on Femian. I also did not have much side effects from Femian. If I did, it was just like nausea here and there, but it wasn't nothing huge. It wasn't nothing where I'm like, oh my god, I need to get off these pills. I was off and on Femian for the whole year that I was home because, like I said, I was inconsistent. So I would take it for 2 months, skip a month, or maybe I would buy that month's supply and like miss a bunch of days and have to start over. I was just a mess. I was not good with taking birth control pills. Especially because when I was home, I did not have a strict routine like I do here. So it was different. Yeah, I just did not stay consistent. So my periods were just they were just becoming worse. They were going haywire. So after that 1 year was up, I returned to the United States for school again. And this is when extra weird stuff started happening to my body. To be honest with you, before I even went home for that 1 year, I started to put on weight, and I started to put on weight really quickly. During my 1 year home, I put on a lot of weight, and coming back here, I put on even more weight, just like that. I remember in January when I returned to the United States, that was January 2021, I didn't see a period, and I was like, well, this has happened before where, you know, I see a period for a few months, then it skips a month, so let's just leave it alone. At this point, I was no longer taking the Femian birth control. I think that's how you pronounce it, Femian. February, I saw no period. By March, I was starting to get scared. I'm like, okay, I've skipped a month before, but this is weird. So I went to the health center. I had the same nurse practitioner that I had in 2020 who put me on Sprintec birth control. So while I went there to take my woman's exam, I mentioned to her about my period. I said, I haven't seen a period since January. This was the end of February that I went to the health center because I remember March is when I had the 1 period. So January, I saw no period. I saw no period by the end of February. So this was the last week in February. I went to the health center, and the nurse practitioner, she put me back on Sprintec. So I went from Sprintec to Femian to Sprintec again, but I only took the Sprintec for that 1 month because I just sucked at being consistent with taking birth control pills. So for the month of March, I did see a period, which is actually withdrawal bleeding because birth control pills do not give you a real period. I did not continue the birth control pills past March, so I only saw a period the end of March. So April comes, no period. May comes, no period. In the whole month of March is when the whole having to go back and take the womanly exam over and over again came into play because they couldn't collect enough cells or whatever had to do. They said something about cells. And like I said, March is when they referred me to the OBGYN at the hospital. I couldn't get an appointment until the end of April. The day before my appointment with the OBGYN at the hospital, I canceled because it ended up conflicting with something that I had come up last minute on my schedule. So I wasn't able to get another appointment until May. I hope that wasn't confusing for you guys. So let me just go over it so there's no confusion. January, I saw no period. The last week in February, I went to the health center and they put me on Sprintec birth control, and they were also trying to do my woman's exam, and I had to go back 2-3 times within March. I only took the Sprintec birth control for the month of March, so I saw a period the end of March. April and May came around, I saw no period. They referred me to the OBGYN at the hospital for April. I had to reschedule. Because I rescheduled, I didn't get to see the doctor at the hospital until mid-May. I also saw no period. So no period from January to June, with the exception of the month of March because I took birth control that 1 month. I hope that clears up the confusion. Where am I now? When I went to my appointment at the hospital in May, the nurse of course came in. You know, they ask you a bunch of questions when you first go into the doctor's office. The nurse asks you about your period and this and that, and she asked me when was the last time you saw a period. I said I saw a period in January because I had forgotten about the month of March. So I was like, I haven't seen a period since January. And then she gave a look, but I was like, whatever. Brushed it off. When the doctor came, the doctor did the woman's exam. Oh, it was painful. I'm sorry. I hate women's. I don't look forward to taking my woman's exam, if you can't tell. Especially after me having to do it 3-4 times in a row. I'm scarred. I'm traumatized. So I hate having to do it. But we gotta do it, right? So she did the womanly exam, and then she was like, I do want to talk to you about your period. So I'm like, okay, what's up, doc? And she said, well, it concerns me that you haven't seen a period since January. And then that's when I was like, oh wait, I think I saw one in March, because I was on birth control pills for that 1 month. And she was like, that's still very concerning that you haven't seen a period from March. So she was like, I want you to go and do some blood work. So she directed me in the back, and they drew blood, and she was like, I'm gonna get back to you with your results from your womanly exam and also the results from your blood work. I'm like, okay. So my main concern, because she started telling me about the womanly exam, about how if they couldn't collect enough cells or whatever, they were going to do some procedure where they have to take a mini camera or something and stick it up my whatever. And I'm like, oh god. But my concern was more so about the womanly exam and why they couldn't collect enough cells, more so than it was about me not seeing a period. So June rolls around. That's when my follow-up appointment with the doctor, the OBGYN at the hospital is. So June rolls around. It's June 6th. That's when I was formally diagnosed. June 6th of 2022 was when I was officially diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I went in, and she off the bat was like, your womanly exam came back fine. We were able to collect enough samples. You're good in that area. And I was like, okay, thank you. So I'm thinking I'm all good. She was like, I do want to talk to you about your periods and your blood work. And then that's when my heart started to like race a little bit. I'm like, okay. And she started to get real serious, and she was like, now remember we drew your blood and I tested it and this, that, and the next. And she was like, you have high androgen levels. Her exact words were high testosterone levels, and coupled with the fact that you have irregular / missed periods, I've come to the conclusion that you have PCOS. And she was like, do you know what that is? And I was like, I heard about it before, like I've seen those words somewhere, but I can't really tell you what it is. And she was like, it's a hormonal imbalance, it's not curable. And she explained to me that with PCOS, I am at a higher risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I'm at a higher risk for cancer in the uterus, cancer in the ovaries. I'm at a higher risk for fatty liver disease, and all these different things that PCOS causes. She listed off a number of symptoms which I do suffer from, which is hair thinning, migraines. She said you also experience obesity, like rapid weight gain and weight that's hard to lose. At that point, I was definitely experiencing that. I'd put on so much weight. She listed off a whole bunch of symptoms, and then she was like, does anybody in your family have PCOS? And I said no, because to my knowledge, nobody had it. Turns out I do have family members that have it. Nobody just talks about it. So I never knew what it was. They never said they had it. And one of the things that she said that really hit me hard was, I always tell my patients that when it comes to fertility, it's going to be difficult for you to have children. She says she never tells her patients that it's impossible. The mere fact that she had to mention the word impossible just made me feel like it was going to be impossible for me. And the fact that I have always wanted children. I've always wanted a lot of children. I tell people all the time I want 10 kids. I want a football team, honestly. And to hear that it's going to be difficult for me to have children, that hurt. Yeah, it caught me off guard, and it hurt when she said you're at a high risk for cancer and this and that. That hurt. When she said infertility, when she said it's going to be difficult, when she mentioned the word impossible, I literally felt my heart was racing, but the rest of me was numb. My physical body was numb. My mind started to go, I wouldn't say blank, but my mind went to the negative. My mind went to, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to have children. And while she was talking, I was zoned out thinking about kids, thinking about a family. I started thinking about my boyfriend and how much we both want children, and how because of this disease, this condition, I may not be able to give him a family of his own. I may not be able to give myself a family that I've always wanted. You know, I've always wanted to be a mother. I've always wanted to be the best mother. I was just zoned out thinking this may never happen for me. And I could feel myself, like my eyes were starting to just get wet with tears. Like I just remember feeling like I just wanted my doctor to stop talking so I could just leave and cry, because I don't like to cry in the front of people. So I just wanted her to stop. Like, I know she was giving me vital information in that moment. I just needed her to just, I just wanted to leave and cry and come back and hear the rest later. But I had to keep it together because she had very important information that she was telling me. Did I hear any of it? No. I didn't hear anything past, it's gonna be difficult for you to have children. I didn't hear anything past that. And I called my mom, told her, I called my boyfriend, told him, and I kept it together all that time. I had on this little fake, I'm okay type of situation. And then when I got home, like, I cried. I just let the tears out. I cried. And I kind of, as time went on, as days went by, the information started to seep in, the information that I did get. I had time for it to digest, and my feelings worsened. My emotions about it worsened. I felt depressed, very depressed. And she also told me too in there, it's going to be hard for you to lose weight. It's harder for people with PCOS to lose weight. And then she turned around and said, but go ahead and try to lose weight. And she said, if you don't see any results in, 6 months, then come on back and we'll talk about ways we can try to help with that. She said all of that, but honestly, I was just thinking to myself about, at first I was thinking to myself all about not being able to have kids, and then I started thinking about all the other stuff she said about weight gain, this and that, and higher risk for diabetes. And I'm like, diabetes already runs in my family. I don't want to have to prick myself every day. I don't want to have to be on this strict diet where I feel like I can't eat anything good. Like, I just started thinking about all of that as the days went by, and all of the information started to just digest. It put me in a state of depression. What made it worse was she did prescribe birth control pills for me, and these birth control pills were the worst birth control pills I'd ever taken. When a woman doesn't see her period, which I was not seeing a period at this point, my periods were missing. They were MIA. They were like, peace out, we gone. There was no blood coming. No, there was nothing. There was nada. So she was like, we need to make sure that you see a period, because if you don't, the lining of your uterus is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, and eventually that's how people end up with cancer in the uterus. So she said, we need to make sure that you see a period. So that's why she prescribed the birth control pills. So once I see that period, the lining will shed. So that was the whole purpose of her putting me on the birth control pills. We just needed to hurry up, find a solution to make sure that I saw a period. So that's what we did. But the birth control pills made me feel super sick. For like the first month and a half of taking it, it made me feel super sick. And the instructions said that it would, or that there was a high possibility that it would. And it said that you must continue taking even though you feel sick to your stomach. And I felt it, and it made me more depressed because I felt nauseous every day. I was throwing up my guts multiple times a day, and as much as I threw up, this may sound very toxic and unhealthy, but as much as I threw up, I wasn't losing any weight still. Like, I was still heavy. Like, I did not understand. And it made me frustrated. And I was working that summer. I stayed here in America that summer to do summer classes and to work. And so I was working. I was on duty that week. So I had to be awake and alert, but I wasn't sleeping because I was up all night, nauseous and vomiting. And I remember my supervisor called me. She was like, Annelia, you're not answering the duty phone. I was a CA. A lot of schools call it a RA, resident assistant. I was a CA, a community advisor. So, like, during the summer, we had week-long duty where we were on duty for the entire school and not just our dorm or apartment building. So I was on duty for the entire school. Anybody who had a problem, they had to call the duty phone. I answered. I dealt with the problem. I was so exhausted and so low energy from like throwing up and being nauseous and being depressed. I just was not sleeping, and so I was tired. And when I was on duty, I was sick, throwing up, and I slept through the phone ringing. The phone was ringing and I thought it was in a dream, honestly, because I had finally gotten to sleep. And then a few minutes later, the phone rang again, and this time I woke up and it was my supervisor. She was like, "Why are you not answering the phone?" And I explained to her, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't feeling well and I finally got to sleep and I heard the phone, but I thought it was in a dream." And she was very understanding, which I'm very grateful for. But she was like, "Do you want to take some time off?" And I'm like, no. The Bahamian in me, I don't know where Caribbean people get this from, but sick or not, we're gonna work. Happy or not, we're gonna work. And we don't want to have to take time off or feel like you can't even get your job done. So I was like, no, I'm gonna work. Honestly, I should have taken that time off because I was sick. I was sick mentally because I was feeling depressed, and I was sick physically because I was throwing up, I was nauseous, and I just was not feeling physically well. My doctor actually prescribed Yaz birth control pills. Walmart gave me the generic version, which was Lorena or Lorena, I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's how that went. And it was terrible. That lasted for a month and a half. It was absolutely terrible and I hated it. Eventually when it went away, it was like, okay, fine. But I did not like being on birth control pills. Something about birth control pills just does not seem good to me. Does not seem healthy. My voice is getting hoarse. So I went back to my doctor and she prescribed other medications for me. But that's basically how I was diagnosed. The backstory leading up to my symptoms and this, that, and the next. To give you a full rundown of my PCOS symptoms, I have really bad pelvic pains. I have constant migraines. I have rapid weight gain that's hard to lose. I have intense sugar cravings. I have, well, now I don't because I'm taking medication to help it, but I had late / irregular / missing periods. I also do have sleep apnea. I will not speak infertility over my life. I am going to have children. I am going to say that right now I am having problems with ovulation because of PCOS, and I'm currently in the process of fixing that ovulation issue, and it will be fixed in the name of Jesus, amen. I'm gonna have my 4 babies. Even though I want 10, I'm gonna stick to 4, and I'm gonna give my boyfriend those 4 babies. They're gonna be beautiful, and I'm just gonna leave that part there. I do suffer from depression and anxiety, which is linked to PCOS because it is a hormonal condition. Oh yeah, fatigue. I feel super tired all the time. It's only through the grace of God that I made it through college. Because I was always tired, and especially because I had such a hectic schedule in college, and I was able to get through it. I got through it super exhausted and tired all the time, and low energy, but I did it. But I definitely feel very fatigued. My boyfriend asks me all the time if I'm practicing to die. The way a Bahamian says it is, "You practicing to daddy." I spend so much time sleeping because I'm just so tired all the time. Fatigued. Yes, definitely a symptom of PCOS. If I'm missing any other symptoms that I have, then I'll put it on the screen. But I think I listed a good amount that I deal with on a regular basis. That's my PCOS story and my PCOS journey, how it started. It's continuing on, but they say it's not curable, so this is going to be a lifelong journey, but it's going to be a journey where eventually I get it right and I figure out what works, what doesn't work, and I'm going to be the healthiest me I could possibly be. Maybe even sooner than I think. But yeah, y'all, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Bye, y'all.